Hi there, I'm Spencer Campbell. I'm a tabletop role playing game designer. I publish under the name Gila RPGs, and I'm also the designer of Slayers, which is the game of focus for today's interview. I am very excited. I've been asked to answer some interview questions. So I've got the questions pulled up here on the screen, and I'm going to use those to just talk a little bit about Slayers, tell you about how I design things and everything like that. So I'm going to just dive in and let you know how the game came about. So the first question is, how would I sell this game? How would I sell Slayers, especially for somebody who's undecided, or what makes the game so unique? So Slayers is a rules light fantasy monster hunting game. If you like fantasy games, if you like action movies or action adventure sort of books or series or comics or things like that, if you like weird cities, then all of that is going to be kind of captured in Slayers. What makes Slayers so unique compared to other tabletop role playing games is its focus on this thing that I call asymmetry. So, asymmetry in games is when two people are playing the same game, but they're using different rules to do it. And we see that in Slayers in the combat side of things. So, when you're going around this haunted, ever expanding city, you're occasionally going to fight some monsters. It's a monster hunting game. And so when that happens, you go into the combat rules, and every single player at the table has their own rule system for how they deal with combat. They're going to do their own things. They're going to pick up different types of dice. They're going to roll dice in a different way. They're going to be doing different things so that you really feel like the class that you're supposed to be representing. In most games, everybody in combat does the same thing. They roll a die, they maybe add a modifier or something like that. And so all of the classes kind of feel like they're doing the same thing. And that's not exciting to me. I want everybody to be doing something unique and special. And so that's the special thing about Slayers, is that sort of asymmetry, that focus on everybody doing their own thing. The next question: how did I come up with the idea of the strategist, or what I call the tactician, in the rule book? So the tactician or strategist is a class in Slayers who rolls a big pool of dice at the start of combat, and then throughout the entire fight, they're spending these dice by swapping them out with any dice that the fellow players roll, or even that the monsters roll. So you can make a player's failed roll succeed by swapping in a better die, or you can make a monster's successful roll fail by swapping in a really bad die. The strategist comes from my love of playing support characters. I really like playing support characters in games, but oftentimes a support character in a lot of games is just going to sit there and heal. They're going to heal and heal and heal, and that's all they do the entire time, and it's not very exciting. And I thought it would be more fun to be a support character who's a little bit more active, who is almost, the analogy that I oftentimes use is they're the conductor of the orchestra, right? The combat is an orchestra, and they're the one that is pulling the strings, almost like a puppet master, right? That's a much more exciting version of playing a support character me than just doing I heal you, I heal you, I heal you again and again and again. So that's where the strategist comes from. Why is the city expanding? That's a great question. So, a premise of Slayers is that you're in this city that's full of all these unique neighborhoods, and the city is cursed, and it is always expanding to the horizon. That there's no end to the city ever, and that it kind of just keeps building and building and building. Why is it expanding from a like fiction or narrative standpoint? I'm not going to tell you why. That is up for you to decide as a table why you think the city is expanding. There's no one correct answer. There's some ideas of why it is in the book, but I'm not going to tell you why. Why, from like a thematic perspective, I did that because I wanted people to be able to try out Slayers in different genres. Maybe they don't like dark, gritty cities. They want something brighter or more exciting, or they want something in a totally different style. You can still do that in the city of Slayers because every neighborhood is represented somewhere in this city. So you can really jump around to different genres or different tones and themes. And by having an infinite city, you have the ability to do that. In terms of sources of inspiration for Slayers, I have like a just from like a thematic standpoint, Bloodborne and Dishonored are big inspirations for me. I like the weird kind of occulty, haunted city vibes in those sorts of things. In terms of mechanical inspiration, Root is the biggest one, and that is a board game that I absolutely adore that leans into that asymmetry stuff. So in Root, everybody is a different faction of this woodland forest, and you're all trying to control this map or do different things on this map and get points, but everybody has a totally different rule set on how they're doing it. And so Root is probably the biggest source of inspiration for Slayers, even though it's not a role playing game. The game that I'm most proud of is a very hard question. Um, I'm absolutely proud of Slayers because I think it's really special and unique and different than most role playing games that are out there. That makes it something that I'm especially proud of. It's been recognized by award nominations. It won an award for best rules from the Indie Groundbreaker network. So I'm certainly very proud of Slayers. I think if I was to be proud of another thing, it would probably be the Lumen system as a whole. I think that system helped me understand who I am as a designer, and it helped a lot of other people create their own games for the first time. And so I'm especially proud of creating the Lumen system and the resources that are surrounding it. What is my favorite district and elements? And what elements did you combine to create it? So I only made one or two districts. I only made a handful of districts in the book, Slayer's Row and the Weird Wood, and all the other districts that you see, like in the hunts and stuff like that, or else in the book, are from other people, and other people have created really, really cool districts. Other authors from around the world. Um, I think my favorite. Ooh, it's really, really tough. I'm Logan Dean created a parasitic graveyard system that goes throughout the entire city as a district, which I think is really, really cool. Josh Hiddy also created a district. It's this massive bridge essentially that just the whole district is a bridge, and it's towering, and so there's different layers of society that live on and throughout and alongside the bridge. um, and just kind of thinking about like monster hunting on a bridge is really cool to me. I think you could have a lot of fun just setting an entire Slayers campaign on that bridge. Um, so I think it's gonna be Josh Hiddy's. Uh, yeah, I think I'm gonna give it to Josh. There is a thing. One of them is clearly influenced by an idea of California or Hollywood. Do I have a special crush? No, so I didn't create the Hollywood. I didn't create the Hollywood district. That's Banana Chan that created that. So I can't speak to their thoughts on the film industry. I have no grudges against the film industry. I love California. I'm from California, so I have no grudges against it at all. um, in Spain, the manual comes with the four classes, right? Swordsman, Arcanist, Strategist, and Gunslinger. Do I have new archetypes in mind? Um, I haven't thought about making any new classes for Slayers in a little while. I've created a few since the original version. You'll find the Deadeye in the Dust expansion, which is a kind of a weird Wild West expansion. I also created a class that's entirely based off of the weird kind of Plague Doctor Crow monsters, where you can actually play as one of them. Um, and I don't have any new archetypes in mind. I had always thought about trying to make an assassin. That was in the original draft of the game. There was going to be 5 classes, and there was this assassin, and I couldn't get it to work the way that I wanted it to. So maybe I'll go back one day and try and finish that assassin class. Some DMs say that the strategist is a pain in the neck because it messes up the narrative. Have you heard anything about this? I mean, you always will hear people say that this doesn't seem balanced or this doesn't seem fair, and I honestly just ignore those people. It very explicitly says in the book that there's no such thing as balance, or there shouldn't be such thing as balance in combat. I strongly believe that idea. Anybody who wants to have a balanced fight doesn't really understand how fighting works in the real world. No fight would ever be fair. Nobody ever goes into a fight hoping that it is a fair fight. You want every advantage that you possibly can, especially when you're hunting monsters that are going to try and kill you. So the strategists, their whole goal is they're not good at fighting. They don't get to fight. They're really, really bad at dealing damage. They're also very weak. They don't have a lot of hit points. So if DMs are so worried about strategists messing with their combat, they should just attack the strategist, right? That's that old adage from Shadowrun, which is geek the mage, right? You go kill the mage as fast as you can because they're fragile, but they're going to do the most amount of harm. Strategists won't do the most amount of harm, but they have a lot of control over the battlefield. So go kill that thing as fast as you possibly can if you think it's such a pain in the neck. Players do big combos with each other, and it makes the system completely broken. Any tips on how to break the game on the monster side as well and increase the sense of lethality? So again, I want it to be broken. And specifically, I want it to be broken in the player's favor. I never like the idea of thinking about a GM being this adversarial force that is trying to defeat the players. I've never liked that. I think that's a weird concept that a lot of people have where they think that the GM is trying to fight the players or beat the players. And I don't think that's the case. For me, when I'm playing games, if the players are having fun because they're doing these really big combos and they're doing these fantastic things that are just laying waste to enemies, then the game is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. The game is not meant to push the players back necessarily. If you want to, you certainly can, right? As a GM, you can add all sorts of things. Like, just think about like The Witcher, for example, right? In The Witcher, when you're fighting and hunting monsters, there are certain monsters that are immune to certain damage types, or you need to do a certain thing to prepare yourself in order to be effective against that monster. GMs can use that sort of stuff in Slayers, right? The stat blocks for monsters in the book are not set in stone. You can change any of that, and so you should change it. You can add things where a monster is immune to swords, and it can't be cut for some reason, right? Unless the players do something else. And so now the players are trying to hunt and research this monster before they fight it so that they have the best chance possible. You're adding a layer of exploration, investigation, prep work that if your players want a back and forth in fighting, then they're going to need to have to be able to do that sort of stuff in the wider scope of the game. How did the concept of asymmetry come about? I kind of talked about this before, but it came from my love of the board game Root. So again, in Root, everybody's doing their own thing, and asymmetry is a relatively common thing that you see in board games and card games. Netrunner is one of my absolute favorites. You can see it right above my head there. Netrunner is probably my favorite card game ever, and it's very asymmetrical. The two players are doing very different things, yet you're able to play the same game, and so it creates this infinite replayability, and this every time it's going to feel different. And so that asymmetry came about in Slayers actually because Slayers was 2 different games before it became one game. So Slayers was originally me making 2 other games. One was a gunslinger game. The other was a game that was trying to replicate like the combos and stuff that you would see in Street Fighter, like the 2D fighting games with exploding dice. And I just realized, what if I just smashed these things together into the same system? How would I make 2 totally different things like this work together in the same system. And that's how I started to kind of brew on the concepts of asymmetry, thinking about how board games do it. They have a core central thing that everybody's trying to do, but everybody approaches it differently. That's what I did when I thought about the asymmetry in Slayers. And then finally, what do you recommend for the novice game director to start playing Slayers? My recommendation, I got a couple different things. First of all, it doesn't hurt to just do like a practice combat before you actually play an actual campaign or a session or anything like that. Do a practice combat, right? Just pick a couple monsters, like easy monsters from the book, put them down on the field, and have the players just fight them. This gives you as the GM an opportunity to practice and learn how monsters work and how the flow of combat works. It helps the players get a chance to practice how their techniques work, right? How each of their own unique rule sets function. So I would recommend doing a session or just a small little, like 20 to 30 minutes, just practice combat, see how it feels. Once you know how combat feels, then you can go into the wider thing, right? Use the example hunts that are in the book, use the example districts that are in there as sources of inspiration. The hunts are designed specifically for you to run an entire session or an entire hunt just by following the prompts in that thing. So I recommend using the tools, but also always recommend doing a practice session with the combat of a game, just so you have a sense of how it works. So that's all of the questions that I got sent. So I hope that helps you understand Slayers and where I come from as a designer and why I think about it. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoy Slayers and support Slayers. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.